before Dan Campbell and the fiery Lions roster, the Lions had brutal years of failure, winning their last playoff game in 1991. So how did the Lions rebuild into their best team in years? This is the Lions rebuild. Coming into the 2016 season, the Lions had suffered a huge loss with the retirement of Calvin Johnson. Known as one of the greatest wide receivers of all time, Calvin Johnson had dominated for the Lions for 9 straight years before retiring early, citing the Lions' past failures as a factor. And the Lions were failing a lot. They had gone 0-16, 2-14, 6-10, 10-6 with a first round exit, 4-12, 7-9, 11-5 with a first round exit, and 7-9 in the last 8 seasons. Overall, there was not a lot of playoff hope for the Lions entering the 2016 season. They did make major acquisitions, signing Marvin Jones to fill the Calvin Johnson hole, and drafting tackle Taylor Decker to improve a league-worst offensive line. Plus, the Lions did have Matthew Stafford, a consistently top 10 quarterback in the league for the past 5 years.
They're at the 1, and Stafford says, "Come on in." Reaches over. Touchdown!
But defensively, the Lions were terrible in almost every category, and hope was very low. But the Lions had one of the most shocking seasons in NFL history, winning 9 games with 8 of them coming from fourth quarter comebacks, making it at the last moment into the playoffs.
Throw it off his back foot, finds a wide open Golden Tate hole. Good kick.
40, the kick is good.
Stafford under pressure, gonna tuck it away and run for it inside the 5, and he's
in the playoffs, the Lions faced the Seahawks, who had a top 3 defense in the league, which shut down the Lions' offense and bulldozed the defense of their run game, cruising to a 26-6 victory.
Great yards. 2nd and 6, another big hole. 3rd and 1, and they're going to run the ball and rolls again, bursts through the line of scrimmage. There's Wilson down there to throw a block to help. And the Seattle Seahawks are moving on, and the Detroit Lions go into the offseason.
The next season, they drafted key players in Jamal Agnew and Kenny Golladay to help out the offense, while also drafting picks Jared Davis and Jalen Tabor to improve their defense. But in the 2017 season, the Lions struggled with injuries to their offensive line, ranking them with the 5th worst O-line in the league. But despite getting the same 9-7 record, the Lions barely failed to make the playoffs. But things were looking up for the Lions, with a younger, injured squad almost sneaking into the playoffs. The Lions were clearly headed in the right direction.
Down, and Crater's kick.
But during the offseason, the management felt like a change needed to be made, leading them into firing current head coach Jim Caldwell and signing Matt Patricia, a questionable decision given the Lions' recent performance. New head coach Matt Patricia was the defensive coordinator for the Patriots dynasty, and originally there was a lot of hype surrounding the signing.
Patricia there is a fantastic pickup for the Lions. I mean, that's the bottom line. He's a very good football coach. He'll make that defense even better.
This would be a seamless transition, which would put them ahead of the curve right off the bat, be able to address some of the issues as far as the roster on this football team is concerned. And then for Patricia in particular, on the defensive side of the ball, he's got some great tools to work with.
But this optimism couldn't be more wrong, as Matt Patricia immediately started having a negative impact on the Lions. During training camp, he would curse out players. He banned jewelry, jersey swaps, and music in the locker room. He made fun of star cornerback Darius Slay for hanging out with OBJ, telling him to stop sucking his dick. And over the next 3 years, all positive Lions progress was completely wiped out, as the following year they went 6-10, and then 3-12-1, and starting the 2020 season, after starting off 3-7, the Lions finally fired Matt Patricia after 2.5 seasons. And the players and analysts who had been calling for this day couldn't be happier.
The culture was fantastic. So you had a winning record in 3 or 4 years. The culture was great. Your quarterback was playing really good football. When he was hired, the comment was, we need to take the next step as an organization. We need to take the next step. It was built for growth, not regression, and they have regressed massively.
The element is that Matt Patricia is somebody that needs to lose his job. He's got to go.
Matt Patricia sucks. Matt Patricia sucks.
Over these 3 years, the Lions only signed 2 players that remained on the 2023 playoff roster: Frank Ragnow in the 2018 draft and Jonah Jackson in the 2020 draft. In fact, from Matt Patricia's last season to the 2023 season, only 3 Lions players remain: Taylor Decker, Jonah Jackson, and Frank Ragnow, all stellar offensive linemen. So the Lions need to hire a new head coach at the end of Patricia's reign of terror. All their forward progress had been eliminated, and they understood that they needed to choose someone to helm and restart the rebuild. and two people were huge in this decision. Firstly, new owner Sheila Hemp, who had taken over the reins from her mother in 2020, was instrumental in first firing Matt Patricia and hiring Chris Spielman as CEO, who helped bring in two insane executives. The biggest one being Dan Campbell, an electric, energetic coach who completely changed the Lions and began the rebuild to today's team.
Thank you. It's going to be built on, we're going to kick you in the teeth, all right? And when you punch us back, we're going to smile at you. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Man, I got a plan, I swear to you. All I think about is you guys. That's all I think about, man. That's all I think about is you guys and how I set you up for the best possible.
Dan Campbell, along with genius GM Brad Holmes, started reshaping the roster. Firstly, by making the huge decision to trade away the Lions' staple quarterback Matthew Stafford for Jared Goff and draft picks. Following that, the Lions had one of their best draft classes ever, picking up Penei Sewell and Amon-Ra St. two of the best players on the Lions roster, and after signing a ton of free agents, this is what the new Lions squad looked like. And although there are key young players that were going to develop over the next 2 years, this team was still very young and learning, and ended up going 3-13-1. And this season on paper should be considered a disappointment, but there's growing excitement in Detroit, as Amon-Ra emerged as one of the top receivers late in the season, and Sewell proved to be one of, if not the best tackle in the NFL. And most importantly, Dan Campbell was proving to be the coach that Detroit could rally behind, building his Lions culture, going for it on fourth down more than any other coach in history, and having a clear passion for his team. Just look at his reaction when the Lions lost a close game to the Vikings in Week 5.
When you see your players give all that they have and you lose that way, it's tough. You know, you don't want that for them.
And this positive momentum carried into the next draft, where they drafted star defensive end Aidan Hutchinson, another one of the best current Lions players, along with Jameson Williams and Kirby Joseph, two very solid starters. And this season was when the Lions' fortunes suddenly shifted. They started the season 1-6, and all the hate on the Lions started to feel justified, seeing that the Lions were destined for yet another failed season.
We're going to bite off their knee. I see what Campbell thinks he's trying to get across. But listen, you see from the introductory press conferences sometimes we're like, uh-oh.
He started talking about how the Detroit Lions, represent the city. We get up when we get knocked down. Well, the Lions haven't. This is just some pathetic
It's the most overlooked record of futility in sports.
Guys, let me play.
Okay, you're the Lions. People see you on the schedule and say, we have an easy schedule.
But Sheila Hemp, unlike other owners, wasn't too quick to judge and said we have the right team in place and to believe. And Dan Campbell kept his team believing, and suddenly in Week 9, things started to click as the Lions started winning game after game, ending the season winning 8 out of their last 10 games, barely failing to make the playoffs due to a tiebreaker. And although they had a 9-win season only a couple years ago, this one felt very different. And this late run was not only because of Dan Campbell, but also because of the team he brought in with him. Midway through the year, he had promoted Ben Johnson to offensive coordinator, who did an incredible job and emerged as one of the league's best play callers and the key man behind all these Lions shifty plays. He also brought in defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn back in 2021, who has really stood out this season, but more on that later. So coming into the 2023 season, the Lions got yet another incredible draft class, getting running back Jemar Gibbs, tight end Sam LaPorta, and safety Brian Branch, some of the best players in the season. And these moves were heavily criticized at the time, especially the signing of Gibbs, who currently leads the league in touchdowns. Now, if we look back at that huge Stafford trade, we see that those picks ended up becoming Jameson Williams, Jemar Gibbs, Sam LaPorta, Ife Melifonwu, Broderick Martin, Josh Pascal. So coming into the 2023 season, the Lions offensively were juggernauts, with Ben Johnson's play calling combined with legitimate stars in Gibbs, Monty, Amon-Ra, Goff, and Sewell. But defensively, the Lions were still weak, especially in their secondary, but with stars across the field, they were able to close out games. The Lions went 12-5, winning the division for the first time in 30 years.
I've been fucking dying for it and waiting for it, man. It's for you, baby. This first one's for you. The rest of you people. Man, enjoy, baby.
And this dominance continued into the playoffs with a dramatic win over their old quarterback Stafford in the wild card and a close game against the Buccaneers in the divisional. Before a disappointing loss to the 49ers in the NFC Championship after holding a 24-7 halftime lead with their bad defense caught up to them. After the game, Dan Campbell was criticized again by talking heads for his aggressive fourth down play calling, and Dan Campbell once again stuck to his guns and refused to apologize for not giving up on the mentality that got him to the biggest stage.
I just felt really good about us converting, and I don't regret those decisions. And that's hard you know, it's hard because, you know, we didn't come through. It wasn't able to work out, but I don't.
Oh, you in a championship game, Dio. You have to change your way of thinking. You can't think this. Because you go home. Because you go home and everybody's calling you dumb. Because
And the next year, the Lions came back with a vengeance. The biggest issue was their defense, and fans at first pointed the blame at the defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn calling for his head. But Dan Campbell still believed in his guy, and the Lions instead decided to sign a better secondary, drafting corners Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw, as well as training for former Buccaneer Carlton Davis III. And with the rest of the team largely the same, the Lions have absolutely dominated this year, going 15-2. Aaron Glenn has proven himself to be one of the best coordinators in the entire NFL after losing 15 defenders throughout the year and largely relying on backups as well as a midseason trade for Zadarius Smith, who has been incredible all the way to the first seed in the NFC. And now all that's left to be seen is how far can this Lions team go.